Hello everyone, and welcome to this new event of the Cañada Blanch Foundation here at the LSE. For those of you that don't know me, I'm your host, and my name is Andrés Rodríguez Pose. I am the Princesa de Asturias Chair here at the LSE and a Professor of Economic Geography, and also the Director of the Cañada Blanch Center at the LSE. Today, we have in this new series of the Cañada Blanch lectures, we have the great pleasure of having the Ambassador of Spain to the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, José Pascual Marco, who is going to be talking about the bilateral relationships between Spain and the UK, but he's going to touch it from a broader angle, as far as I understand. This is an important year. There are going to be elections in the US in November. There will be elections in the European Union for the European Parliament. That would take place in June. There will be elections in this country, the UK. We don't know the date for sure, but it's going to be sometime towards the end of the year, so probably around December. And these elections, like elections in many other parts of the world, India, are changing the world in the way we are seeing it. We have far more bigger challenges, wars in the European doorstep. We're also having significant geopolitical challenges, significant processes of change from an economic perspective, deglobalization, change in the global production chains around the world. And this is going to lead to a very, very different world. And Ambassador Marco is going to be talking about all these issues and bringing them to the more concrete realm of, let's say, the future of what's going to happen, especially in the UK and in its relationship to Spain. Let me just introduce the biography. I think José Pascual Marco has got a very impressive biography. He is the ambassador of Spain to the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and since August 2021, and as a diplomat by career, he has held an impressive array of positions in all parts of the world. So I think he started in Pakistan, then Nicaragua, Australia, Turkey, South Africa, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the USA, and Brussels as ambassador and deputy permanent representative of Spain to the EU. So he certainly can cover the whole world. In Madrid, among other roles, he has been Director General for Cultural Policy and Editorial Industries at the Spanish Ministry for Education, Culture and Sport. And from 2017 to 2021, he was Director General for Coordination of EU Common Policies and General Affairs at the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, European Union and Cooperation. Ambassador Marco holds degrees in law and philosophy and a diploma in international studies from the Spanish Diplomatic Academy. But as I said, you're not here to listen to me, you're here to listen to Ambassador Marco. So Ambassador Marco, the floor is yours. And after that, he'll take direct questions from all of you. So please be ready and be sharp with your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrés. Professor Andrés Rodríguez Pose. It's a privilege to be invited by him to this prestigious series of lectures. And I would also like to express my thanks to the Centro Cañada Blanch, responsible for this cycle of lectures. And the first thing I want to say, lo que quiero deciros, queridos amigos, queridas amigas, dear friends, is thank you. Thank you for coming. There are so many things to do in London. I believe that my son told me the other day that Dune 2 is already out in the cinemas. You could be doing so many things and you're here listening to me to an old fog. So my first responsibility is to ensure that you have a good time. And I'll try my hardest. And my second responsibility is that maybe you listen to something interesting that makes you think and also to learn from you. For me, it's very important to be here. I always learn and I always come back with something positive to use in my job. So, having said that, I've got here one of my collaborators, Eduardo Escribano. I have been told by some of my harshest critics, my wife, namely, that I'm too gloomy, that I'm the prophet of doom, too negative about what is happening in the world. I don't think so. I see myself as an optimist, but Eduardo is going to keep me honest, and he's to write down every time I use a negative or something especially, you know, depressing. He will make a mark, and he will tell us at the end of the lecture how many of those banned expressions I have used. It will not be easy for me, as 2024 is shaping up to be a challenging, stimulating year, but I will try my best. As Andres said, I've had I wouldn't call it distinguished, I would call checkered and full of movement career. I have traveled around the world. I've lived, not traveled, lived in 5 continents and in 10 different countries. And I've always tried not to go back to Spain for my annual holidays, but to, you know, to walk, to go around those countries, to meet the people there, to not to be one of them, because that is impossible, but to understand them, to leave a bit of my heart in those countries. And what I can bring here today, maybe to you, young people, is that experience of having the world under my eyes for 40 years, to see it change, to see the world tilt around its axis, to have a sense of change, of maybe even of direction. That is very important, I believe, for everybody, for you too. You have to be situated in space, but also in time. And in 40 years, I can assure you the world has changed a lot. And my sense in the last 10 years, what I feel in the pit of my stomach, is that change is accelerating, that we are moving faster and faster towards a fulcrum, towards a space of change. And that has been very clear in the last 3 or 4 years. We are going into what some people call clima incognita. We can see it in the transformation in the climate every year. We are going into the artificial intelligence black box, and even the experts cannot tell us what is inside that black box. We are going into the geopolitical unthinkable. We have forgotten about nuclear weapons, but I will tell you that in 2026, the last treaty remaining, standing, restricting nuclear weapons will expire. So we are moving into the unknown, not necessarily, Eduardo, a negative unknown, but, you know, a challenging unknown. You are all familiar with the term of polycrisis, tools. Now it is in common use. It is a theory that says that the shocks of the last 10, 15 years, they are interrelated or at least synchronized. There is risk, synchronization, and reinforcement of these risks. And what have we seen in the last 15 years? We've seen many good things, but we have also seen zoopandemics, like COVID. We have seen an acceleration of climate change, a huge financial crisis, the biggest one since 1945, and geopolitical instability linked with a surge in populism and in authoritarian regimes. And they are all tied to each other, and in some aspects they reinforce each other. And is there a common thread? Is this risk synchronization simply the objective fact that shocks amplify each other, or there is a common thread? Well, the last thing I want to be is a Malthusian, is a determinist, a demographic determinist. But I must tell you that when I started my work in Pakistan 40 years ago, the world had 4.5 billion people. It now has 8 billion people. And the last billion people were added in how many years? Do you think? Give me a figure. How many years to add 1 11,000 million people to this earth. 11 in 11 years. And the next billion is going to be added in the next 14 years. And I can assure you, because I've seen it with my eyes in places transformed, places that had ceased to be, that 1 billion people is a lot of people. So there are nearly double the people that were on this planet when I started in Islamabad 40 years ago. Then the science fiction novel you might know, Standing in Zanzibar. Then that novel, the premise is that everyone in the world, those 4.5 billion people, if they stood with 1 meter around them, they could all stand in Zanzibar. Now they wouldn't be able to stand in Zanzibar. And we don't have double the people of 40 years ago. We've got 10 times the people 40 years ago, because they consume a lot more, because they are a lot better communicated, much more interrelated. They lay a heavier weight on this planet, but at the same time, they bring all their qualities, all that interconnectedness to bear for good, for transformation, for a better planet. So, Eduardo, not a negative. I think it is a Galileo law that quantitative change at some point in time makes for quantitative change. You can add 1 unit, 2 units, 3 units, and you have got the same substance. And then you add 1 more unit and you have a different substance altogether. And that is a bit what is happening now. That is maybe what I'm feeling in the pit of my stomach. That fulcrum I was talking about. That these increasing numbers and increasing interrelatedness is going to give birth to a newer world, to a different world. And here are we, Homo sapiens, here are we, the new species, having to adapt to that change and also making the world adapt to it. There are 2 jokers maybe in the back of this transformation. One, I've mentioned both of them. One of them is artificial intelligence. We don't really know, but we should prepare and we should regulate. That's what the European Union is doing. And the other joker in the pack, is a joker that we have forgotten. Maybe because the latest generation, your generation, was a generation born after the Cold War. You don't remember the fear, the pervading fear, the oppression that lay on the head of my generation because of the threat of nuclear weapons. We have forgotten a bit about it. And also with the START treaties, with the SALT treaties, the number of nuclear weapons in the world has come down drastically. But the threat hasn't disappeared. Anything possible is real. That was the theological argument of Ansel to prove the existence of God. Anything that exists, any possibility that exists will become real sooner or later. And the number of nuclear weapons is creeping up. Their quality is improving. There is, both the United States and Russia have got in place tremendous programs for the replacement and improvement of their nuclear weapons. New types of weapons are being put in place right now. You heard about the scare a few days ago about a nuclear weapon in the skies. As I said, those SALT, START treaties have been lapsing and they haven't been renewed. The last one will lapse in 2026. This joker in the pack is a joker we really should avoid seeing laughing. We shouldn't laugh about it. This is something that we can do something about and we should do something about it. I really think that 2024 is going to be an important year. We have got incredible conflicts on the table. We have got Gaza, we have got the Ukraine, we have got, as Andres said, big elections coming in the United States, in Russia too, in the European Union. But we can do things about these challenges. And I wanted to now look at the positive side. What is the positive side? Well, the Ukraine, for example, the European Union and the West in general stood firm and was firmer and more determined than in 2014. And the Ukraine, with incredible courage, stood up to the Russians, and we haven't lost. On the contrary, we are going to win as long as we stand fast. And it wasn't easy. Remember the response in 2014. Some of the problems we have seen now, it is because of the weakness and divisiveness of our response in 2014. We have had COVID, we have had a pandemic that was supposed to kill 1 billion people. And we once again came together, put in place the right policies, or the policies that were rational in most cases, and also brought to bear our incredible technological prowess. We put on the table, in a question of months, vaccines that normally would have taken tens of years, and we stopped the pandemic. We could have had, after the pandemic, an incredible economic crisis, like in 2009, 2015. But we showed that human beings can learn lessons. Even Germans can learn lessons. I love Germans. And instead of austerity, we put in place the most ambitious fiscal program ever from the European Union. And we were able to grow quickly out of the economic crisis caused by the pandemic. With our next generation funds, we are in the European Union preparing the future, the digital transition, and the transition to a more sustainable and respectful of climate model of growth. So, climate change, once again, we should be optimistic. It is frightening what we see. You can one mark there. It's a bit frightening what we can see, and sometimes I think, I mean, what has God got to do to make us conscious of what is happening? Because when you see 200-kilometer fronts of fire, Brooklyn clouded by smoke, 40-degree summers in Spain, you ask yourself, what has poor God got to do to make us realize that we have got to take this extremely seriously? But once again, it's not that simple to act in a planet with the inequalities, with the divisions in this planet, and with the very rudimentary architecture of management of world affairs. But we have more or less managed with the COPs conferences and with more or less collective action. And right now, production of renewable energies is going through the roof. I've gotten up, and every day, because I'm a bit obsessed by this, every day at around 10, 11, I look at, in this app, as how electricity demand is met in Spain. And for the last week, we have been lucky. There has been a bit of wind. I was looking at 70% renewables, 90% counting with nuclear and hydro, 90% electricity demand in Spain at 11 a.m. covered by renewables. 90%, that is a lot, the whole week. So we are making progress there. We've got to make faster progress, but we are making progress. So I've got here a lot to say about what we have done during our presidency of the European Union, Spain. We have tried hard. It's only 6 months, but we have been lucky in approving important directives and regulations that are going to be important, as I say, for the future of the European Union. We approved the first regulation of artificial intelligence, and I think that is very important, not only because the heft, the weight of the European Union makes it one of, if not the greatest regulatory power in the world, but because of an example. The example we set will make others look more seriously at regulating artificial intelligence. We have reached a migration pact, maybe not perfect, but for 15 years, we had been fighting about it, and it establishes an equilibrium between restricting illegal migration, protecting the rights of migrants, and sharing the burden among all the European Union states. We have kept the European Union on a fixed course on support for the Ukraine. We have also had, at the last Council of the European Union under our presidency, make the Council of Heads of State, of Heads of Government of the European Union, ask for a humanitarian pause on Gaza. And since then, the European Union has moved forward in trying to protect the rights of the Palestinians and of everybody involved in the conflict, without, of course, forgetting the security of Israel. And Israel is a part of Europe. We cannot forget that. It's a part, because of our history, because of many things, it's a part of Europe. We have had the first summit with Latin America, the forgotten continent. We forget about Latin America. It's 500 million people. They share a lot of our values and our goals, but we forget about them. And now China is the biggest trade partner of Latin America. They are very important allies. We should consider them part of our Western, not in the geographical, but ideological sense, Western coalition. We should pay more attention to them. And we are proud to have organized this summit. And finally, but not less important, we presided over a European Council that decided on the enlargement of the European Union, including countries such as the Ukraine and Moldavia. The European Union is not afraid to step up to the plate. And the best way to step up to the plate is to say to these countries, you're going to be part of us. It's not that we support you, you're going to be part of us. We are looking at an interesting year in the European Union. There will be elections this year, as you know. 365 million people will be coming to vote. We don't know what will happen. There will be a decrease of support for traditional parties. The big coalition that has steered the course for the European Union in the last 4 years, made of center-right, center-left, and in most cases also the Greens, will see its number of seats in the parliament go down. And the populist left and right, especially the populist right, is going to go up. But we still think that there will be a working majority in parliament. And that is very important. I mean, elections in the European Union are becoming more and more important because of the weight that Brussels has in the life of everybody, in the life of any European. 60% of all legislation in Europe is made in Brussels. And Brussels policies determine the rhythm of economic and social and political life in the European Union. So if finally Ursula von der Leyen continues to be the next president of the Commission, and I think she has done a very good job, it will be important for her to have a sizable majority, because otherwise policies such as the fight against climate change or a humane migration policy or support for the Ukraine could be threatened. What will the new Commission look like and look forward to? And with this, I'm starting to finish. Well, the challenges are not over at all. Once again, it is the Ukraine. Once again, it is trying to be proactive in the conflict in the Middle East and finding a solution and stopping the carnage. It will be increasing our strategic autonomy. That means ensuring ourselves against geopolitical, technological risk. We've got to be more self-sufficient. As I said, the climate change policies, they are fragile. Many people, of course, it is impossible to fight against climate change and to make our economy sustainable without making some sacrifices. And of course, the groups, the sectors, the people who are more directly affected, well, they exert legitimately political resistance. But it's a fight that is worth fighting, and we've got to keep on doing these policies. And finally, defense and the Ukraine. As you know, the idea of commissioner for defense has been bandied. Europe has got to take seriously its defense. This is not about Trump. Every American president since Bush Jr. has been telling us, grow up, grow up. You are the most prosperous area in the world. I mean, the United States has more GNP than Europe. But I can tell you, I've lived in Washington for 4 years and I've gone all around the United States. There are a lot more richer people there than here. But the quality of life here is completely different. So you are living in a place where you can go to a hospital and they're going to treat you You go in the street, the police is not going normally, it's not going to shoot at you or to beat you up. You can express your opinion anywhere you want. You have unemployment benefits. We are privileged people. I've lived in Congo and I've gone all around Africa. Your lives are the exception. The lives of, for example, the Congolese, there are 60 million of them, are not the exception. They are the rule for large numbers of people around the world. And this area is not going to protect itself. That hasn't ever happened. I think that Herodotus carried a shield at Platea. From the Greeks onwards until today, we have had to protect what we cherish, what we want to endure. So your generation will be called upon to fight. In the best possible of worlds, it will be a non-bloody fight, but you will have to defend what I consider a beacon of hope in the world, which is the European Union and the UK. So to end this little lecture and to start listening to you and having a dialogue with you, challenging, interesting, stimulating. It has been quite boring for the last 60 years. That is the life I have lived. It's been boring. Nothing has changed much. You know, that well, the wall came crumbling down, but apart from that, but now change is coming, and it can be good change. We can build a better world. Not we, not me. I mean, once again, I'm an old fool. I don't know whether you remember from the Bible, from the prophets. I think it is Joel. Your old men shall dream dreams. Your young men shall see visions. So I encourage you to have a utopic horizon, to see visions, to systematically imagine a better world. Let us stop judging. We are used to social media and to saying like, dislike, and any event that comes to us, all the information we are bombarded with, we are judging all the time. Judging it's not positive. You can do it at the end of the process. First, you have got to understand how the system works, how the moving parts fit to each other, how things influence each other, what is important and what is not, what is the direction. Understand, and then have a vision, and that vision should be a utopian vision. That is what I bring to you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, thank you very much, Ambassador, for a very enlightening and exciting speech. But now we have the challenge of the questions, and we have quite a few hands. Remember, I always say in these conferences that this is not a place to make statements, it's a place to ask a question. And the question starts by what, when, who, how, to what extent. So make that exercise when you start asking your questions. And please, when I point to you, stand up and tell us who you are, where you're from, and that's it. So we'll start over here. Please, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Ambassador. The name's Ewan Grant. I'm a former law enforcement intelligence analyst who worked in quite a number of books, particularly I'm now a broadcaster. My question is, Spain's recent presidency, and the theme you mentioned of building a European life, and therefore British relationship with Latin America. How did that go, and how is that going forward? 2014, just after the Maidan, I was back in England. I was working for the EU delegation as a contractor. I put on the table a hard copy of Tom Clancy's farewell book, Command Authority. He said to the star, Command Authority. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. And it must have been interesting in 2014 in Kiev, that is for sure. Well, Latin America now it's complicated, the dialogue with Latin America, because it is in political effervescence. It is a continent in evolution. Also there we have the tension between populist forces and also between the traditional right and the left. The panorama is changing all the time. So it's not easy. It's not a country, it's not a continent united in itself. But we have got to keep up the dialogue. It must be a strategic dialogue. And we have got to sign Mercosur. I mean, I'm sorry for agriculturalists. I'm sure that we can put money on the table, so to make it their while, but to have Mercosur is still, like Banquo's ghost sleeping around the corners, dragging the chains around after more than 10 years of negotiating it. This is absurd. We are shooting ourselves in the foot. We need Latin America. We can learn from Latin America, and we can profit from the relation with Latin America on all aspects, and to start with on the trade aspect, because we are talking here with Mercosur, we are talking 300 million consumers and producers. And also we've got to engage with them, on the fight against climate change. We are talking here about Amazonia, and we should be very concerned. We should help, we should engage on that. Thank you. Next question.
Yes, over here.
Thank you very much. I'm Josep. I'm from Spain, and I study at. Thank you very much. I'm Josep. I'm from Spain, and I study at Sciences Po in France and UCL here. And my question is, you mentioned the idea of a European defense. So aside from meeting the 2% target of GDP, etc., how do you see that conforming, like structurally or organization-wise, considering that NATO already exists and also UN restrictions?
Considering what?
Consider that we are in NATO and that we're also in the UN for security and military purposes. How do you see the idea of a common European defense conforming, if that's what you meant, aside from the GDP?
Good question. Here I'm going to answer a bit at length, because I think it is quite important and more complicated than we think. NATO is essential. I mean, we cannot live without NATO. When there is a big problem, NATO is there, and we need NATO. But NATO is not a political organization. It's not a country or a confederacy of countries. It's a military alliance. What we have seen in the Ukraine and in other crises is that the political unity of the European Union, which is a political organization, is essential. So we need both. And the European Union is one of the countries that are components of the European Union, are important allies in NATO. And what the European Union can do is to ensure that those countries contribute more effectively to NATO, which is contributing also to the European defense. So what is a bit ridiculous is having 27 countries, each with its defense budget, each manufacturing a little here, a little there, with different specifications for the weapons, replicating each other's capabilities and replicating each other's limitations and absences. Because at the end result, it is not that we are spending 1.5% of GNP on defense, which is ridiculous. Seeing what is happening around Europe, it is ridiculous. It is that we are spending it so badly that it is equal to, I don't know, to 0.1% of GNP. I can assure you that practically no European country is capable of embarking on a projection of force, on a serious projection of force, including probably with you have seen the two aircraft carriers in Portsmouth, I'm sure. So we've got to get our act together. The UK is very important in this. It is one of the most powerful armies in the European Union, and we need it. We need to come together, especially if things turn badly in November in the elections in the United States. What can we do? Well, the Commission of Defense is very good symbolically because it can bring all the pieces together. We have got the EDF, the European Defense Facility, and that is a way of pooling money. It's a extra-communitarian funds. So without getting technicalities, countries putting money into the pot instead of the European Union budget. But that pot is important because you can use it for common endeavors, such as buying weapons for the Ukraine or buying essential weapons for Europe. We have got another fund now on defense industries, on research and development. We have got to do our research and development together to develop, for example, a new generation of fighter jets. No country can do that. It is too expensive. We've got to do all of us together, coordinate weapons research, weapons acquisition and deployment. Many things that we can do, and we have also got to spend more. We have got to go probably over the 2%, but especially we've got to be more clever about the way we spend. And then there is one last question, of course. If worse comes to worse, there is the question of the nuclear umbrella over Europe. For the time being, there are two countries with nuclear capabilities in Europe, the UK and France. In the world of nuclear weapons, I don't want to talk too much about this because it is not agreeable, but deterrence are more important than, fortunately, more important than use. You have to have a credible deterrence. If your adversary is threatening you with the use of nuclear weapons, which once again, unfortunately, don't put a bad mark on me because you should put it on Putin. It is happening. You should have a credible deterrence. Reform of the UN Security Council. Right now it's a utopia, but I think a utopia we should think about. And EU representation in the European Council, in a remodeled European Security Council, would be important too. But the end of the message is we've got to get our act together. We have had several close calls. We've had Syria with 3 million refugees thrown into the muddy roads of Europe. It nearly sunk the European Union. It nearly disappeared over the tensions of those 3 million people. We have had a first close call on the Ukraine. We have had Libya. The world is not a safe place. And unfortunately, it is people with authoritarian leaders who don't improve like wine with time, who are to a certain extent unpredictable. We have got to act with the prudence of the paterfamilias. We should be able to protect ourselves. Next question over here.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for being here. I have two questions.
Say who you are, please.
My name is Andres. I'm from Colombia. I am a student at the Master in Science in Local Economic Development. And my first question is about your leadership. So how you can deal when there are conflict interests between UK and Spain, for example, after Brexit, about fees in imports, trade, how you can deal with that when there are conflict interests. And my second question is about the current war. So how much money and how much time Spain and the European Union is willing to give money and time for Ukraine for win the war, because now there are elections coming up in Russia. Maybe it's possible that increase the expenditure, but in the other hand, we have a conflict interest in US about the help pack to help Ukraine, and there are elections in Europe. So what do you think about the future in how much time and how much money you can help Ukraine?
Good.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Well, your first question, ambassadors are notoriously querulous. We are complaining all the time, but we complain in a very diplomatic way. We call the FCDO or whatever minister is in charge of the policy, and we say, I mean, I admire you so much, you are so good and all that, but could you please stop, doing this or doing that? So we are mediators, and we try to do things with a smile on our faces. Just today, to prepare for this lecture, I had breakfast with David Cameron, with the Foreign Secretary. True, I get breakfast with him. And it's strange because I hate waking up early in the morning, but I don't know what happened with me. I misread my watch or whatever, and I arrived nearly half an hour early to the breakfast at Lancaster House for all EU ambassadors. And he arrived early too, so we spent 15 minutes talking before the others arrived. And there I tried to sleep everything that concerns us, reset the status and negotiations with Gibraltar are going and so on and so forth. So you've got to be a nice guy when you are ambassador. When you are director general, then you can afford to be more disagreeable. The second question, the Ukraine. We have given 6 billion euros in weapons through the European defense facility. And then individual countries have given a lot more than that. For example, Germany, I think the latest figure is 17.5, so 17,500 million euros, just Germany. France, they dispute the figures, they say more, but more or less 4 billion. Spain, I don't have the figures, but we have made a big contribution, including Leopard tanks, NAMS, anti-aircraft defense systems, etc., etc. And not only that, the European Union has done two very important things. One is to finance the Ukraine, and that is something that we do way back, not now, but that now we have accelerated, giving financial support to the Ukraine. And the last European Council approved 50 billion in financing for the Ukraine, which is going to keep that country afloat because it is on a war economy. And on the other hand, I think that Europe has opened its doors to Ukrainian refugees, Europe, including the United Kingdom. In Spain, more than 200,000 Ukrainian refugees. They have been scholarized, they've been helped, they are living there. So that is also important as a sign of solidarity. We've got to do even more, but I think that we have done quite a bit. Next question.
Over here.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm Daniel. I study political economy here at LSE, and I'm from Germany. My question is, you mentioned EU enlargement and mentioned Ukraine, very important, but what is sometimes a bit forgotten is the whole Western Balkan. And your country plays a very critical role by not recognizing Kosovo as our own country. So my question is, when will Spain start to recognize Kosovo as a country and play a more constructive role in the Balkan integration process? Thank you very much.
Where did you say you were from?
Germany.
Oh, Germany. But where in Germany? South Germany, West? South Germany. Now, well, the situation in the Western Balkans are an important part of the complicated equation of this year. In demographic and economic terms, not so much. I mean, when you look at Northern Africa, which we completely ignore, like Latin America, when you look at Morocco, Tunisia, Libya, Algeria, Egypt, the numbers, the population, the economy, their influence on the southern shores of the Mediterranean. I think that we do spend a lot of time on the Western Balkans. I'm sure I've well spent time, but we should maybe think a bit about those countries too, unless we want to be disagreeably surprised sometime in the future, like we were with the Libya crisis. The Western Balkans have got already membership of the European Union in some cases, in other cases not. Many of the countries in the Western Balkans are candidates to the European Union. The process hasn't been easy. It's not ours to blame, but frankly, the political evolution in some of these countries hasn't been exemplary. The case of Kosovo, Spain now has got informal relations with the Kosovar authorities, and we wish the best to Kosovo. But it was a part of a recognized state, a United Nations recognized state. And Spain is very firm that changes in the map and territorial changes have got to be negotiated and must be subject to a very wide consensus. Because it is very, very dangerous to start saying, well, in this case, yes, we take a bit of land from this nation and we make it independent. Now, in that case, no, it is bad. We think this is a very serious thing to alter the territorial order that came out of 1945. So the time of Kosovo will probably come. We look with sympathy at all the region, and we look with a lot of sympathy at Kosovo, but for the time being, we don't recognize. Next question.
Thank you very much. Over there.
Hello. First of all, I wanted to thank you for coming, Mr. Marco. It's a pleasure to have you here at the LSE. My name is José Pablo Carbonell. I'm from Alicante and I study PP here at the university. And I wanted to ask you regarding, as you've just mentioned, the North African countries and relationships of Spain with Frente Polisario, Algeria and Morocco. Given that Spain has really good relations economic-wise with Algeria as their main energy suppliers for a few years going now, and given that the Frente Polisario leader has been hospitalized in Spain in recent years, why do you think there's been a shift in Spanish mentality towards aligning more with the Moroccan values instead of the Algerian, and making Algeria rise the cost of energy significantly in Spain? Why has this shift happened, and what's your personal opinion on the future relations of Spain with North African countries? Thank you.
Well, I'm very relieved because with your question, I think there are no horrible, complicated subjects left than anybody else can ask. We already had Kosovo, now Frente Polisario. Thank you. So without going into the long history of this conflict, well, first of all, it is really almost a tragedy, but it's really sad that Algeria and Morocco don't get along with each other. Nothing should have stopped them from getting along with each other. They share a lot of history. They share the same land in Northern Africa. They share regions, language, and goals and interests. And this enmity between the political leadership, because I don't think it is between the people of Morocco and Algeria, is very bad for the Maghreb, for the whole region, and for the European Union. And it has stopped us from having more effective policies to bring up the Maghreb. Regional policies, development regional policies, for example, are almost impossible. You cannot build common infrastructures if countries regard each other as enemies. Spain is a very good friend of Morocco and a very good friend of Algeria. Very traditionally, very good friend of both, linked to them by geography and by history. But in the when we are talking about the conflict in the Sahara, in Western Sahara, Spain has decided that you have got to go with reality. If you can envision an independent Western Sahara under Polisario leadership, well, I mean, it's always good to have visions, as I said, but it's a difficult one. Sometimes, you know, the train goes off the station, the world moves on, and you've got to go for the solution that causes the less damage or causes the better future for a region. It is something that most countries in the world have already done. Morocco's conduct in the Western Sahara, it's not for me to judge Morocco, but I think that they've done quite a good job there. And they have spent a lot of money there. The Western Sahara has changed enormously in the last 13 years. I'm not an expert, but what they tell me is that the region is going well. Of course, the Sahrawi population must be taken into account. It must be respected. Their rights must be recognized. I'm a diplomat, so my opinion is that there is always a deal to be made. And a bad deal is much better than a protracted conflict. That is it.
Okay, next question. There was one over here. Yes, over there.
Good evening, Mr. Ambassador. I'm Gaspar from Madrid. I study here at the LSE. I wanted to ask you about, you talked about Ukraine being led into the European Union. And I wanted to ask you if you think that's a good idea to let a new country that is in the state of war right now into the European economy, especially considering the very hard complaints that had been going on from agricultural sectors about European Union policy. I am a firm believer myself in the European Union, and I share your views, but I feel like maybe this is creating more, is making the European Union bigger than it should be, and not focusing on maybe federalization or pushing for a higher power of Belgium. It's giving ideas to the critics of the European Union. I would like to know what you think.
Thank you. ¿Cómo dices que te llamabas? Thank you, Gaspar. Gracias, Gaspar. It's a very good question. And I've always been of two minds. And zwei. Eh? I've always been of when you say it like that, more or less, and zwei. I've always been of two minds about it, me and many people in the European Union. But once again, the train has left the station. What could we do? 300,000 casualties in the Ukraine. They are standing up for us. They are dying for us. Make no mistake, Putin is attacking Europe. He's attacking our value. What he really hates is that there should be a prosperous, democratic, free Ukraine, a big country like that next door to him. That's what he hates, like all autocrats. That is a threat to him. And we cannot make the Ukraine part of NATO, unfortunately, because it is in a state of war. We would be immediately involved in the war. But we can make the Ukraine part of ourselves. And that is the way the European Union has always acted. Right? How could we say no to Greece or no to Spain in the 80s? How could we say no to Eastern Europe after the wall fell? So you're right. Maybe we would have been happier in our cocoon and more united. I don't know whether we would have been more united with the French. I'm married to a French woman. I don't know whether we would have been more united, but yeah, core values, the motor of Europe, more cohesive and more inward union. Those are all the arguments, and more prosperous too. If the Ukraine became a member today, Bulgaria, which is the poorest member of the European Union, would have to start to be a net contributor. That is the immense difference in wealth between the Ukraine and Bulgaria, which is receiving billions of euros in European policies, would have next day to start contributing, being a net contributor to agricultural policy and to the common policies of the European Union. So this is tough, but what can we do? This is the way the European Union is. We embrace those that look up to our values, that want to live in a space of freedom, and it is going to be tough, but we have got to. It's a path we have chosen. We'll have to reform the European Union. We cannot go on with 27 commissioners. We cannot go on with veto power and unanimity vote on all important questions, not only on foreign policy, but on fiscal policy, on defense policy. We have to reinforce the safeguards in the European Union against those that don't share the values of our club, against those that don't respect law and order. The more we are, the more vigilant we have to be. But it is the way.
Thank you, Gaspar. Before I go into your second surname wouldn't happen to be Taroncher? No. Yeah, what are your surnames? No, then it's not. I just confused. More hands. So we'll have more hands over here. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Neil. I'm from Mexico, studying a master's in political science. And I just have two quick questions. The first is, well, how does the European Union and Spain in particular react to the slow emergence of China as an economic, as a technological power, and its influence in other regions of the world. And the second is that in 2018, the Mexican president politely asked Spanish royalty to, say sorry for the mistakes of the conquista. So what is the position of the Spanish government, of the Spanish, of Spain, of the Kingdom of Spain in general, in regards to this, and if there is a future prospect of recognizing the rights and wrongs of the conquista? Thank you so much.
Thank you. I had forgotten about the conquista when I said that. So I like moving around. So if suddenly I trip on this because there is this case here,
You have to be careful not to fall, so.
and also I want to hear from the ladies because if
Yes,
not a single. So the next question.
we have a hand already, so
Okay.
it's the first hand that has
Well,
been
the
raised.
hand is a good start. Then we need the other hand. Anyway, the first question was China. 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 I mean, yeah, you cannot ignore China. I mean, you all know we are talking here about 1.5 billion people, about probably in terms of PPE, the first economy in the world. It is there with the United States, and going very fast up the value, up the technological scale. As you know, we have tried to stop them a bit by banning the most advanced microchips from China. They are already establishing independent production lines for them. We are talking about a very influential actor on the world stage. It's Road and Belt Initiative, its trading and aid policies. They are watching us very closely, watching for signs of weakness. They are watching what happens in the Ukraine. That's one of the reasons why we have to win in the Ukraine is China. They've seen that in Siberia, they are already the new petrochemical complexes that Russia cannot build, and because of sanctions, we are not building. They are building them. The oil and gas that Russia is not selling to Europe because of sanctions, they are selling it to China. Basically, they are taking over Siberia. I mean, big club for Putin. This war was for the independence of Russia and for the greatness of Russia, because thanks to the war, China is basically taking over Siberia. Anyway, China is also a force for good. China is a continent and a people absent from history for the last 100 years, mired in horrible civil wars, in tragedy, invaded, downtrodden. We are talking about the conquista. Let us talk about the Opium Wars. Now they come back on the world stage and they're bringing a lot to the table. It's wonderful to have China there. And they're doing a lot of very good things. I've been, for example, involved in development cooperation for a very long time. Now, all I read in the newspapers is how awful Chinese cooperation policies are, how they make countries dependent. No, they're doing things in a different way. They're making some mistakes, but they're also avoiding a lot of the mistakes we made with our development policy. And they're doing good things in Africa, and for climate change, for big world management issues such as, for example, climate change. They are essential, and they are doing. They are going into production of renewable machinery, which without China, what we have seen on wind and solar would be impossible without the contribution of China. What they are doing with electric cars. It is very important that they bring. But they are a risk for us, and they are a challenge in many ways. You have to put on the other side of the balance Uyghurs, facial recognition, technology, a concept of individual freedom that doesn't correspond to ours. We have to share the same world. It's becoming a much smaller world. So we have to talk. We have to talk a lot and to coordinate, but we've also got to be vigilant. We cannot be complacent. We cannot. That is the concept of strategic autonomy. We cannot rely on the goodness of our partners. Dialogue, but be vigilant. On the conquistas, I think that it was Newton that says the hypothesis non fingo. I don't talk about hypotheses. I would like to say, I don't like to talk about the past. The conquista or the discovery of the Americas, what happened in the 16th century, it changed the world completely. And the world that we have today is the world created by the conquista. There were mistakes, I would say that. There were more than mistakes, there were tragedies, there were catastrophes, of course. Some of them may be inevitable, others completely avoidable. But we cannot go back on the past. We can acknowledge, we should, some people say we shouldn't judge the past by our standards. No, I believe that we should judge the past by our standards because they are past. We should call a massacre, something inhuman, we should call it inhuman. But at the same time, because you can do more than two things at the same time. You know? I said that Gerald Ford was incapable of walking and chewing gum at the same time, but you are capable of holding two thoughts in your head at the same time. Not contradictory thoughts, but different thoughts. At the same time that we judge the past by our standards, we should understand it in its context, by its standards, by what was happening then on the earth. It's without avoiding the question, for me, it is funny to think that maybe, in some sense, I mean, analogies are wonderful. What is happening in 2024 is a bit of the other side of the mirror to what happened in 1492, 1525, etc., etc. Then we brought horrible pandemics to the rest of the world, and in this case, to Latin America. Now, because of this interconnected world, from the deep forest of Cameroon or the marketplaces of Wuhan, we are getting a ration of strange illnesses. Then we started a period of Europe growing demographically, economically, taking over the world. Now we are on the cusp of the rest of the world regaining its rightful place, and Europe and the West being diminished economically and demographically. And then the world was becoming larger. The new terra nullius, what we call terra nullius, new spaces were open to the world. Now the world is becoming smaller thanks to the means of communication, the roads, the fence. I'm great for analogies, also analogies. In any case, to end the question, I think that Spain, everyone in Spain, historians, our public opinion, our newspaper, they all recognize the tragedies and humanities and the catastrophe that for the Aboriginal people of the Americas was the conquista. But we are, to tell you this, we are also very proud that together with those people who survived, they didn't survive in the United States, but they did survive in Latin America and Central America. Together with them, we created a new world, and the music, the literature, the way of thinking of that continent is unique. We created a new world that we should cherish and value and interact with this world today in 2024.
Thank you very much. There were quite a lot of you use actually quite a lot of hands.
Women.
No, but it's right at the back over there first. Yes.
Well, thank you very much for being here. I'm Gabriela, I'm from Madrid. I'm a social policy and politics student here. And I wanted to ask you regarding Latin America relations with Spain and the European Union, and how recent elections in Argentina, as well as upcoming elections in El Salvador, Dominican Republic, and other Latin American countries, how do you think results could change relationships with Spain and the European Union, and how have they changed with Spanish governments? Because you've been a diplomat. Well, Aznar was here, for example, president of Spain, and now Pedro Sánchez. Have you seen any changes regarding elections? Thank you very much. So, if changes have, like, if relationships have changed regarding elections, both in South America and Spain. So if Spanish government and who was president made an impact between the relationships between the countries.
Well,
thank you.
First of all, thank you very much for opening the fire. your agenda. And I've got two more women, and I'll take their questions. I'm just going to say that in around 5-6 minutes, we'll start wrapping up. I don't know what is, but I think that is more or less our time. Yeah, I mean, Latin America is moving. I don't know that well the continent, although I served for 2 years in Nicaragua during the Sandinista revolution. And by the way, Ortega is still there. I mean, amazing. So Latin America, once again, as I said, it's a new world. It's a world, for me, it is firmly in the West, in our tradition. It believes in freedom, believes in social justice. People there are not afraid to speak their minds and to step up to the plate. And there are many injustices there, many economic injustices, many social injustices, a lot of inequality. There are also racial tensions. There's an Indian population, if you want to define it in linguistic terms, but you know, there is a spectrum between whiteness and Indianness, we can say, with the majority of the population in the middle, but in some countries it's more marked than in others, for example, in Bolivia. So each country has its own challenges. Argentina, which is a very white country, has had governance problems for a very long time, but at the same time, Argentina has been having a good time for a very long time and contributing a lot to the world. Its writers, thinkers, its artists. Now it's going through dire economic straits. We've got Milei at the helm. Frankly, I cannot read him. You make up your own minds about him. It's going to be interesting what is going to happen there in the next few months. But we don't have any special problem with Milei, nor do we have a problem with Bukele. I mean, we have a problem with anybody who tramples freedom and human rights. But Bukele per se, I mean, there is a big problem of violence in Central America, as you know. And if you are a poor person living in El Salvador, and I'm told I lived for 2 years in Nicaragua, then if your life is threatened all the time by the gangs, if you cannot go out of your house, if you are afraid that your daughter is going to be raped or your son is going to be abducted or killed or whatever, you don't care about what somebody does as long as you see the problem go down. And that, of course, is fertile grounds for populism. Once again, we've got to support policies in Latin America that combat that violence, which in part is linked to drugs and to weapons. So I'm not going to get into it, but we don't have special problems. Frankly, Spain doesn't have any special problems in Latin America. I think that you wanted to ask a question. Maybe.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you, Professor Andres. Ambassador, you mentioned...
Sorry, can you say your name and where you're from?
Yeah, my name is Maria, and I'm from Spain as well. I'm from Madrid, and I'm currently studying PPE here at the LSE. Ambassador, I was wondering, you mentioned repeatedly throughout the lecture today on the importance of coming together in Europe, given the current context of geopolitical uncertainty and nuclear threats ahead, right? I was wondering, to what extent will Brexit have a negative effect, if any, in the UK's and EU's capacity to come together against these future geopolitical risks?
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good question. Brexit, of course, was felt deeply in the European Union. I know I had a son and a daughter studying here in the UK. My daughter, for example, was part of the Remain campaign. They were both very bitter after the election, and in fact, they left the UK. My son was offered a doctorate at Cambridge, and he felt so bad that he preferred to accept another one at Zurich and left. My daughter also. So a lot of people were very disappointed. by the vote, but it is what it is. It was David Cameron that called for this vote. The last 10 referendums on Europe have all had a no to Europe vote. He knew what was coming. I mean, in Poland, in France, in Italy, in the Netherlands, in Denmark. Every time you put a question on Europe, the citizens think it is gratis, a protest-free vote. They vote no. Golden rule: don't call referendums on Europe. Indeed, now the UK is out of Europe. We feel it deeply. The effects are being felt today. 60% less students in UK universities. So felt at the human level. A lot more difficulties for young people to come here to work, learn a bit of English, contribute to this economy, and then go back to their countries. Something that is positive for the UK, positive for us. Mobility, youth mobility. We are working on it as an ambassador and as part of the group of EU ambassadors, but also as ambassador of Spain. For us, it is a priority to sign an ambitious new mobility agreement with the UK so that at least young people can move freely. And to, if possible, to have the UK rejoin Erasmus and make things easier. Horizon, joining Horizon was already a success, and that rejoiced us. UK, Brexit, the constraints, the fiscal constraints that the UK have today in part are because of Brexit, because of course, when you've got the Germany behind you and the euro behind you, it is easier to borrow. You don't have the limitations that Liz Truss experimented when she tried to have an expansive. But then the huge next generation funds to facilitate the transition to a sustainable economy, fight against climate change and digital economy. The UK doesn't have access to them. Now Keir Starmer has renounced to his 28 billion euro or pound pledge to fight against climate change. If the UK were in Europe, would have access to those funds. Our hope is that, I mean, the UK is here, it's part of our history, it is part of our society. We've got 400,000 British residents in Spain, and 400,000 Spaniards living in the UK. 5 million European Union citizens live in this country. We don't want to lose that. We believe in the same things. We have had a very similar history. We probably should forget a bit about Brexit because what is done, and I don't think that has a quick solution. Let us not fool ourselves. But we can work within the situation that Brexit created to establish the deepest possible links between the UK, starting with mobility and following up with the Pact on Defense and Foreign Affairs, and keeping investment and trade rolling. That sort of working together on the world regulation challenges that we have on the fight against climate change, where the UK has always been a front runner in the fight against the pandemics and the regulation of artificial intelligence. On the fight against deepfakes and manipulation of elections. We haven't talked about that, but we expect big surprises this year. I had lunch with the CEO of Microsoft for Europe, and she said, we now have the capabilities to steal an election in the last 24 hours. CEO says that it's something to learn about. Anyway, we've got to work together. We are going to get closer, I hope, in the future. There are going to be elections here. After the elections, we renew our push for closer links. There was another woman who wanted
All
to
right,
ask a
so
question.
last question, then coming.
And okay, so you can shout.
The microphone will arrive.
Shout it from the rooftops.
Hi, I'm from the FCDO, actually.
Yeah.
From the FCDO. My name is Isla. Yeah, but my question was about Spain's effectiveness lobbying within the EU. So before Spain took the presidency of the EU Council last year, Sanchez said something like, Spain has consistently punched below its weight. So I wanted to ask if you think that the presidency of the EU Council has changed that at all. And also you see something quite interesting, I think, in the EU at the moment, with Spain taking quite a different approach to the situation in Gaza to the rest of the EU member states. Spain, along with maybe only Ireland, has been a lot more vocal about calling for a ceasefire. So given that its position is so different, but that it hasn't really been able to change the position of the EU, how does Spain convert itself into the kind of member state that Germany or France is, and really land those arguments for foreign policy?
Thank you. That is a very good question to end up the round. I remember you that your young men shall see visions. I want you to see visions. But to see visions, you have got to understand the world, to think about the world, not to judge the world, to think about the world, to see the system before we depart. And before I answer this last question, I want to know how many negative expressions have I used, Eduardo?
Not really.
9. 9. Good. So I've had a very varied career in the diplomat, and that has been the fun of it, that I've done many things. I've been bilateral ambassador. I've been in charge of NGO cooperation for 3 whole years, been in charge of cultural policy in Spain. Been a bit of a jack of all trades, and that is my character. I've enjoyed it. Some other people concentrate on one thing and become great. I've been mediocre a lot. And one of the things I've been mediocre at is the European Union. I've a big part of my career there. I was ambassador for 5 years there in Coreper 1, which The Economist has called the most secretive conclave in Europe. That is where we make most of the legislation. And I think I know, as well as anybody, how the European Union works. That is, I know it badly because nobody knows how the European Union works. But I don't think that Pedro Sánchez punches under his weight. I think, frankly, that honestly, he punches over his weight. And he will never punch at the level of France and Germany, because that is impossible. Those are the two, by far, the 2 biggest economies of the European Union, the 2 biggest armies, the 2 biggest technological capabilities. We are not going to punch at the level of France and Germany. And the other thing is that in the dynamics of the European Union, the ruling party is very important. The ruling party at the parliament level. And as you know, the PPE, the center-right, has had the upper hand for the last 20 years. A country with a center-left, socialist government is not going to be able to have the same impact as a country when the president of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, is from the center-right in Parliament. The majority is from the center-right. But within those provisos, Spain is a big country, it's an important country, and Pedro Sánchez, in my opinion, is undoubtedly the leader of the center-left in Europe, the leader of the socialists, and he's not shy of using that power, the power as head of government of Spain, and an official leader with Costa now alone of the socialists in Europe. Like he did, for example, in the European Council, where he held the European Council up until 4 o'clock in the morning, until at least they agreed to write humanitarian pause at the end of the Council, to call for a humanitarian pause. Or when Spain, and then I was working in Spain, when Spain planted firmly its foot on the ground and said, we need a huge amount of funds to face the aftermath, economic aftermath of the pandemic, and they must be common European funds. We were instrumental in the shape and the size of the next generation funds. And we are also front runners in so many issues, like, for example, development cooperation and protection of the rights of women, or the fight against climate change. We pushed the European Union into accepting the Iberian exception and not tying the price of gas to the price of volatile energies. And now under our presidency, a new model for electricity and energy markets has been approved. So I do think he punches at his weight, but it's not the weight of German press. You have been a wonderful audience. Never fielded so many and so many difficult questions in my life. I will be back. I will be back. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. I would like to thank you all for coming. We had a short presentation and I had a lot of questions prepared just in case there were no questions. There were a lot of questions and I apologize to people at the back that wanted to ask questions, and unfortunately we didn't have time to do it, but we have had almost an hour of direct responses by Ambassador Marco to all of you, and I'm very grateful to you for coming here, taking questions without any filter, and not just taking any questions, but probably you said they covered all the difficult issues that you could deal with, and you deal with them very, very well. So thank you very much for your presentation. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you. And remember, all of you, we have another event coming from the Cañada Blanch Center that will take place on the 25th of March. It would be in the Hong Kong Theatre, and we'll have Salvador Illa, who is the former Minister of Health during the pandemic, and now the leader of the Catalan Socialists, coming to give a talk, and the format would be exactly the same. So we expect many of you to come back here and to actually ask the difficult questions. Thank you very much. Thank you.